Hi there, I'm Dr. McFerrin with DM Explains. If you haven't noticed from other videos on this channel, my day job is as an engineering professor at a small university. One of the best things about being a professor is the interaction that I get with students both in and out of the classroom. It's pretty well known that board games can be used to help people get to know each other and to break the ice in social situations. Back when we were allowed to interact with other humans, we would host groups of students at our house for social events, and almost every time we ended up playing some board games. In this video, I'm going to share my 5 top board games to play with students. You may think this is a pretty specific list, but you could see how this might apply to a number of other situations in which you're trying to get to know people. Now, obviously, in a state of world pandemic, it is difficult to play board games in a physical space. And so, as often as possible with my list, I present digital alternatives, so that way you can still use these sorts of games. I also want to point out before I start that some of my engineering students are really into board games, so we've played Terraforming Mars, Twilight Imperium, and Power Grid. Those are not the games I'm talking about in this video. Instead, I'm talking about games which give people an opportunity to express themselves, but don't put them on the spot and put a lot of pressure on them, so it's really a welcoming environment. These games are also great because they give me a chance to understand the humans a little bit better that are playing. You might think that this is just a list of party games. I would contend that it is not, because there are certainly games which I would not classify as party that are on my list. If you want to fight me on those, I suppose you can put that in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get started. My number 5 in my 5 games that I like to play with students is Just One. Just One is a cooperative word game in which one player, the guesser, is trying to guess a word that is not known to them, while the rest of the players, the clue givers, are writing a one-word clue. Hence the name Just One. The wrinkle that comes in is that any clues which are duplicated are eliminated, and so there are scenarios in which the guesser is reduced to having one word to try to make a guess from, or likely the most oddball clues that no one else in their right mind would have thought of. This leads to situations which are way funnier than they have any right to be. What's fun about this is that you get to really learn how other people's brains work as you see how they give and interpret clues, and it always leads to more laughter than I expect. One great aspect of this game is that you could absolutely play it virtually. If you wanted to do it in person, you could definitely play it outdoors with a comfortable distance from each other. Number 4 in my top 5 board games to play with students is Codenames. I think at this point, most people familiar with board games will be familiar with Codenames, and even those who aren't really familiar with Codenames have probably seen it. It's available in most big box stores like Walmart and Target. Don't let its availability fool you. Codenames is an excellent game. For those of you who don't know, in Codenames you have a 5x5 grid of word cards, and the group is split into 2 teams. Each team has one clue giver and the rest of the team are guessers. The clue master has a card hidden from the rest of the group, which gives the pattern in that 5x5 grid that they're trying to get their team to guess, and they have to look at the words and give clues appropriately. The clue giver gives a one-word clue and one number. The one-word clue is intended to link words in their pattern together, and the number is intended to tell the team how many of those types of cards they're looking for. This leads to hilarious situations when the clue giver says bird 2 and there's a hawk, an owl, and a robin on the board. The guessers are going to then try to choose the words that correspond to their correct pattern without hitting the other team's words, neutral words, or a game-ending assassin. The teams go in alternating order, and just the meta that is established as you figure out what the clue giver is trying to say and what the guessers are discussing. The clue giver may alter their next clue based on the discussion of the clue givers. It's really great fun. Obviously, this may be hard to do in person for the foreseeable future, but there is an online tool called Codenames.game, I'll put the link in the description, where you can play this online with your friends. I'm probably going to be using it with my students this year. My number 3 game in my 5 best games to play with college students is Pit. Pit is a frenetic commodity trading game in which players are trying to corner the market on a particular commodity like barley or coffee by trading cards, by shouting things like trade two cards, and then they find someone to trade with and they're trying to get all of the same card in their hand. So you can imagine while this game is going on in real time, there's a lot of shouting. Add to that the game comes with a nice bell that you use to start and stop trading. This is a mass market game. It is very easy to find. It's probably about $15 or less. A lot of serious gamers may frown at this one, but it is so much fun. I have never had a bad time playing it if I break it out with a group of students. This is even more low pressure than the games I've already talked about, but it is a good icebreaker and it makes it so that way other games are more feasible to play. There is no way that you can shout and pass cards back and forth without livening up the mood. That being said, this is the one game on this list that I think is impossible to play with appropriate social distancing, and so you might want to pass on this one for the foreseeable future. Number 2 in my top 5 games to play with students is Welcome To. Welcome To is a roll and write or flip and write style game in which you are a city planner attempting to appropriately build housing subdivisions. Each player starts with a blank sheet with 3 rows of houses, and they're writing house numbers based on cards being flipped. There's a set of 3 cards. Each card on it has a number, and what you'll do as a player is that you'll choose one of the 3 numbers available and write it into your score sheet. You're trying to do that in ascending order, so starting from the lowest number and working your way higher. The effects associated with these cards give you scoring bonuses, allow you to break the rules in some ways, or even let you put fences in your subdivisions. Using these to great effect, you are racing to complete city plans and playing simultaneously. Every time the card is flipped, every single player picks a number and an effect that matches that number, and then play continues. What I love about this game is the simultaneous play and puzzly nature. For me, it ticks a lot of the same mental boxes that doing a Sudoku puzzle does, but there's actually fewer constraints than there are in Sudoku. Because of the simultaneous play aspect, this game has very little downtime, and you can easily get through a whole game of it, even with a big group, in about 30 minutes. This game is also infinitely scalable. As long as everyone has a score sheet to work with, they can play along. I think that this works great over a video call, and I definitely expect to be playing it with students this year. And finally, the number 1 game in my 5 top games to play with my engineering college students is Resistance Avalon. Resistance Avalon is a social deduction game. If you are familiar with Werewolf or Mafia, you will see the roots from that. There are a certain number of good players, and unknown to the good players are some evil players. To successfully win the game as the good side, you need to go on a certain number of successful missions, choosing players who may or may not be trustworthy to go on those missions. The good players must submit a success for the mission card, and bad players have the option of either submitting a success or fail. This can lead to really interesting situations in which the bad player chooses to pretend to be good, so that way they can establish themselves as trustworthy early in the game. In addition to this basic gameplay, there are some special roles that are used or added in. For example, the role of Merlin, who knows who the bad characters are, but cannot reveal themselves to be Merlin because the baddies get a chance to win the game at the end with an assassination of Merlin. We've had some of the most ridiculous arguments about who's being too quiet or who's talking too much based on the game we just finished 2 minutes earlier. The logic of who to trust is just bananas. Before the students left to go home last year, this was the game that hit the table most frequently. I'm going to be looking for ways to play this virtually or play similar games. There are some similar games that are available online. I'm dropping links in the description. I am cautiously optimistic about these games because there is a certain buzz of being around the table with someone and arguing with actual humans in the same room. All of the games that I've mentioned in this video are perfect for helping a group bond and get to know each other. It doesn't have to be specific for playing games with students. They have just worked for me because that's my context. I would highly recommend all of these games, and in this video I've presented some ways to play some of the games virtually. What are some games that you think would work in this situation? What are some virtual options if in person won't work? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I'm almost at 500 subscribers, and that would be a huge milestone for my channel. Most importantly, if you like what I'm doing, please share my content with others. Until next time, thanks for watching.